Ambassador Zethkri's blue skin flickered with nervous light patterns as his ship approached the massive Galactic Council station. The ancient structure hung in space like a metal flower, its petals stretched wide to catch the light of 3 different stars. He had received the emergency summons just 2 days ago, cutting short his vacation on the crystal beaches of Veltar Prime. The message had been short and urgent. Council emergency session. Korthak situation requires immediate attention. All senior ambassadors report within 48 hours. Zethkri sighed, his gills fluttering with annoyance. The Korthak were always causing problems. The warrior race seemed to believe that might made, right? And they spent most of their time conquering smaller worlds or picking fights with anyone who would give them one. He assumed this was another territorial dispute, maybe over mining rights or shipping lanes. His personal shuttle docked with the station's diplomatic bay, and Zethkri made his way through the familiar corridors. The station buzzed with activity. Dozens of different species hurried past him, their translators creating a constant hum of conversation in the air. He recognized ambassadors from the Trilani Commonwealth, the Mokesh Republic, and even a few from the mysterious Shade Collective. The main council chamber was already packed when he arrived. The circular room could hold representatives from over 200 species, and today it seemed like they were all here. Zethkri found his assigned seat in the Veltar section and activated his translator implant. High Chancellor Vexana called the session to order. The ancient Mokesh leader's tentacles waved slowly as she spoke, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Fellow beings of the Council, she began, we face a situation that requires immediate action. 3 days ago, forces of the Korthak hegemony attacked and captured specimens from a newly discovered world in Sector 447b. A murmur ran through the chamber. Specimen collection was common practice when first contact protocols were being established. Most species understood this as a necessary part of learning about new civilizations. Zethkri's attention drifted as the Chancellor continued with the usual diplomatic language. He had heard this speech dozens of times before. Some aggressive. Species captures a few individuals from a primitive world. The Council sends a strongly worded message, everyone goes home. It was routine. The world in question, Chancellor Vexana continued, orbits a yellow star and is inhabited by a bipedal species that calls themselves humans. Initial scans suggest they are in the early stages of space-age technology. Several representatives laughed quietly. Early space-age civilizations were barely worth notice. They usually had chemical rockets and maybe some basic satellites, nothing that could threaten established galactic powers. However, the Chancellor's voice grew serious. There is a concerning aspect to this incident. The specimens taken by the Korthak forces were juveniles. The laughter died instantly. Zethkri felt his bioluminescent patches dim with shock. Around the chamber he could see similar reactions from other species. Tentacles curled inward, scales changed color, and several representatives made sounds of distress. Show them the footage, Chancellor Vexana commanded. The chamber's main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of a Korthak transport ship. Zethkri leaned forward, his eyes widening as he saw the contents of the holding cells. Small bipedal creatures, barely half the size of adult humans, huddled together in the metal cages. Their large eyes were wide with fear, and many were making high-pitched sounds that the translator identified as crying. One of the tiny beings reached through the bars toward another cage, trying to comfort an even smaller one. The protective gesture sent a chill through Zethkri's body. Dear ancestors, whispered Ambassador Klex from the Trilani delegation. They're babies. The footage continued, showing Korthak soldiers roughly handling the small humans, forcing them into examination chambers. The children's fear was obvious, their distress calls echoing through the ship's corridors. Zethkri's hands began to shake. As a Veltar, he came from a species that held the protection of young ones as the highest law. But more than that, he had heard stories. Whispers from deep space traders and explorers about certain types of species that should never ever be pushed too far. How many? Asked Ambassador Ureth of the Shade Collective, her voice barely a whisper. 17 juveniles, the Chancellor replied. Ages ranging from what humans would call 6 to 14 years old. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Zethkri barely heard them. His mind was racing, trying to remember where he had heard about humans before. Then it hit him like a plasma blast to the chest. 2 years ago, at a deep space trading post, he had shared drinks with Captain Morgeth, an old Trilani explorer who had spent decades mapping the Outer Rim. The captain had been telling stories about the dangerous species he had encountered, the ones smart traders avoided. "There's this one world," Morgoth had said, his 3 eyes unfocused from the alcohol. "Yellow star, blue-green planet. The locals call themselves humans. Bipedal, no natural weapons, look soft and weak, but Zethkri, my friend, I've seen what they do when you threaten their young ones." Zethkri had laughed at the time. What could primitives do to anyone? The old captain's expression had grown deadly serious. "I once saw a human mother tear through 6 armed Corvan pirates with her bare hands because they grabbed her child. Didn't stop until every one of them was dead, even with a blade sticking out of her chest. The Corvans are 3 times human size and covered in armor plates." "Surely you exaggerate," Zethkri had said. "I wish I did. But here's the thing that really scared me. When other humans heard what happened, they didn't punish her for the violence. They celebrated her, gave her honors, built monuments." Captain Morgoth had leaned closer. "They're pack bonding, Zethkri, all of them. The whole species treats every young one like it belongs to all of them." Now, sitting in the council chamber and staring at the footage of terrified human children, those words came rushing back. Zethkri felt his skin flash bright yellow with panic. "Chancellor," he called out, his voice cutting through the noise. "We need to contact the Korthak immediately. They must return those children at once." "Ambassador Zethkri," the Chancellor replied. "While your concern is noted, standard procedure calls for formal diplomatic protest first. We cannot simply—" "No!" Zethkri stood up, his body pulsing with alarm colors. "You don't understand. The humans, they're pack bonders. Apex pack bonders. Taking their young is not just a crime to them, it's a declaration of war against their entire species." Several representatives looked confused. Pack bonding was rare in the galaxy, and most civilized species had evolved past such primitive protective instincts. Ambassador Drumax of the Korthak delegation laughed, his massive form shaking with amusement. "War? From those soft little creatures? Our intelligence reports show they don't even have proper space travel yet. What could they possibly do to the mighty Korthak hegemony?" Zethkri's skin flashed red with desperation. "You're thinking like a civilized species. Humans don't think that way when their children are threatened. They don't consider odds or logic or survival. They just act." "Ridiculous," Drumax snorted. "Primitive emotions make for weak warriors." But Zethkri could see understanding dawning in the eyes of some of the older ambassadors, the ones who had traveled to the dangerous edges of known space. They had heard the stories too. "Chancellor," Zethkri pleaded, "we must warn the Korthak fleet. If they don't return those children immediately, they may have just awakened something terrible." Admiral Grakthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Crusher, watching his crew conduct their final experiments on the human specimens. The massive Korthak warrior was pleased with the operation. His fleet had swept through the human system like a storm, taking what they wanted without any resistance worth mentioning. The humans had tried to fight back, of course. Their primitive ships had launched pathetic missiles and energy beams that barely scratched Korthak armor. It had been like watching insects attack a mountain. Amusing, but ultimately pointless. His communication officer approached, saluting with a sharp bang of his armored fist against his chest plate. "Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council Station. Ambassador Zethkri of the Veltar wishes to speak with you urgently." Grakthos snorted, his tusks gleaming in the bridge lights. "The Council moves quickly. They probably want to lecture me about proper specimen collection procedures." He waved a dismissive claw. "Put him through." The main screen flickered, and the image of a very distressed Veltar appeared. Zethkri's skin was flashing rapid patterns of blue and yellow, colors that Grakthos recognized as extreme agitation. "Admiral Grakthos," Zethkri began without pleasantries, "you must return the human juveniles immediately. Release them unharmed and withdraw your forces from their system at once." Grakthos laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Greetings to you too, Ambassador. And why exactly should I do that? These specimens are valuable for research purposes. The humans show interesting biological adaptations." "Because you have taken their children," Zethkri replied, his voice tight with fear. "Do you understand what that means? You have committed an act that humans will never forgive or forget." "They're primitives," Grakthos said, gesturing toward the holding bay where the young humans were kept. "Look at them. No claws, no fangs, no armor. They're weak creatures that cry when separated from their parents. What could they possibly do to the Korthak hegemony?" On the screen, Zethkri's colors shifted to deep red. "Admiral, please listen to me. I've studied humans. I've heard reports from deep space explorers. They're not like other species. When they're young or threatened, they become something else entirely." Grakthos turned to his science officer, Commander Thokmar. "What do our scans tell us about human combat capabilities?" Thokmar consulted his datapad. "Minimal, Admiral. They have no natural weapons, thin skin that tears easily, weak bite force, and limited physical strength. Their military technology is at least 500 years behind ours. A single Korthak warrior could easily defeat dozens of them in direct combat." "There," Grakthos said, turning back to the screen. "You see? Your fears are groundless, Ambassador. You're not listening." Zethkri's image leaned forward desperately. "It's not about individual combat ability. It's about what they become as a species when their children are in danger. They stop thinking rationally. They stop caring about survival. They become a force of nature." "Emotion makes warriors weak," Grakthos stated firmly. "It's a fundamental truth. The strong survive, the weak perish. These humans will learn their place in the natural order." Zethkri was quiet for a moment, his skin cycling through colors of distress. "Admiral, let me tell you a story. 3 years ago, a Corvin raiding party captured some human children from a border colony. The Corvins are strong fighters, nearly as powerful as your own people. They thought the children would make good slaves. And?" Grakthos was growing bored with this conversation. "The humans found them. Not their military, not their government. Just humans. Civilian humans who armed themselves and hunted down the Corvin fleet. They didn't demand negotiation or prisoner exchange. They destroyed every Corvin ship, killed every raider, and burned down their home base. When other Corvin fleets tried to retaliate, the humans didn't stop. They kept hunting until the entire Corvin civilization was extinct." Grakthos frowned. He had heard something about the Corvin disappearance, but the reports had been unclear. "Surely you exaggerate." "I have the Council's official reports if you want to see them," Zethkri replied. 147 Corvin ships destroyed. 38 colonies abandoned or wiped out. An entire spacefaring civilization reduced to scattered refugees in less than 2 months, all because they took 12 human children. The bridge fell silent. Several of Grakthos's officers exchanged glances. Commander Thokmar spoke up hesitantly. "Admiral, perhaps we should consider the ambassador's warning. If there's even a small chance—" "Silence," Grakthos roared. "I will not be frightened by stories of primitive savages. The Korthak fear no one." On the screen, Zethkri's skin had gone completely white, a color that meant absolute terror in Veltar body language. "Admiral, I'm begging you. Return the children. The humans have already sent diplomatic messages asking for their safe return. They're being polite now, but that won't last. Every moment you keep those children is another moment closer to catastrophe. Let them come." Grakthos snarled. "My fleet consists of 47 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. I have the finest warriors in the galaxy under my command. If these humans want their spawn back, they can try to take them." "You still don't understand," Zethkri whispered. "It won't be a battle. It won't be a war. It will be an extinction event. Yours." Grakthos cut the transmission with an angry gesture. Around the bridge, his officers looked uncomfortable. The Korthak were brave warriors, but they weren't stupid. If even half of what the Veltar ambassador said was true— "Commander Thokmar," Grakthos said, "double our patrols. Increase sensor sweeps of the surrounding space. If the humans want to try something foolish, we'll be ready for them." "Yes, Admiral," Thokmar replied, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Deep in the ship's holding bay, 17 human children huddled together in their cells. The youngest, a 6-year-old girl named Sarah, was crying for her mother. The oldest, a 14-year-old boy named Marcus, held her close and whispered that help was coming. Marcus didn't know how he knew, but he was absolutely certain. His parents would come for them. Everyone's parents would come. Adults always came when children were in danger. It was just what they did. High above, in the ship's sensor array, the first signs of incoming vessels began to appear on the screens. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Ships of all sizes, from military vessels to converted cargo haulers, all heading toward the Korthak fleet with grim determination. The humans were coming for their children. Captain Elena Rodriguez was having morning coffee in her apartment in New Geneva when the emergency broadcast interrupted every communication channel on Earth. She nearly dropped her mug as the president's face appeared on her wall screen, his expression grim and controlled. My fellow humans, President Chen began. 17 hours ago, hostile alien forces attacked our outer system monitoring stations and abducted 17 children from Research Colony Alpha 7. These children, ranging in age from 6 to 14, are currently being held aboard enemy vessels. Elena felt something cold and sharp settle in her stomach. Around the world, she knew millions of other people were feeling the same thing. The sacred line had been crossed. I am therefore authorizing Protocol 7, the president continued. All military personnel report to duty stations immediately. All civilian vessels capable of space travel are hereby conscripted for rescue operations. This is not a request. Elena was already reaching for her uniform. As a captain in the Earth Defense Force, she had trained for this moment, though she had never believed it would actually come. Protocol 7 had been created after first contact, when humanity realized they shared the galaxy with other species. It was the plan for when someone took human children. Her communication device buzzed with incoming messages. Every pilot, every engineer, every person with space travel experience was being called up. But as Elena read through the messages, she realized something remarkable was happening. People weren't just responding because they had to. They were volunteering. Commercial pilots were offering their cargo ships. Mining companies were converting their asteroid breakers into transports. Even the luxury cruise liners were being retrofitted with weapon systems. The entire human race was mobilizing, and they were doing it with a speed that defied belief. Elena's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on her door as she was putting on her boots. The elderly woman's face was set in hard lines. Captain Rodriguez, she said, my grandson is 14, same age as some of those children. I've got my old medical transport from the Mars colonies. It's not much, but I'm taking it out there. Mrs. Patterson, Elena replied carefully, you're 73 years old. You haven't piloted a ship in over a decade. I know, the old woman said simply. Doesn't matter. They took our babies. That phrase was already spreading across Earth's communication networks. They took our babies. It didn't matter that most people had never met the children from Alpha 7. It didn't matter that the colony was at the edge of human space. The children belonged to humanity, and someone had dared to take them. Elena reached her assigned ship, the EDF cruiser Vigilant, to find her crew already at work. Chief Engineer Santos looked up from a weapons console, his face streaked with grease. Captain, he said, we're installing those new plasma torpedoes ahead of schedule. Also, I've been getting calls from civilian contractors. They want to mount weapons on their ships, too. Approve all requests, Elena said immediately. And get me a connection to Fleet Command. Admiral Sarah Kim's face appeared on the bridge screen. Behind her, Elena could see the organized chaos of humanity's largest military base. Officers were running between stations, and the background noise was constant. Captain Rodriguez, Admiral, Kim said, your ship is being assigned to Battle Group 7. We launch in 6 hours. 6 hours? Elena was surprised. Normal military operations took weeks to organize. Admiral, how is this possible? Admiral Kim's smile was cold as space. Captain, we've had 17 hours to prepare. In that time, we've seen something I've never witnessed before. Every human government on Earth has stopped fighting and started cooperating. Every corporation has offered their resources. Every person with relevant skills has volunteered. Elena looked at her tactical display, which showed the growing fleet assembling in Earth orbit. Hundreds of ships, from massive military dreadnoughts to converted mining vessels, all moving with perfect coordination. Admiral, she said, what are our rules of engagement? The Admiral's expression grew even harder. There are no rules of engagement, Captain. There is only one objective: get our children back. Everything else is secondary. Across human space, the same scene was playing out on every world and station. On Mars, the colonial government had just finished a bitter trade dispute with Earth. Within hours of the broadcast, they were offering every ship they had. The asteroid miners of the belt, who normally fought constant turf wars with each other, were sharing resources and information freely. Dr. James Webb, director of the Titan Research Station, watched from his office as his colleagues loaded their ships with improvised weapons. His research vessel, the Carl Sagan, was never meant for combat, but his team had managed to mount a particle accelerator on the front hull. Dr. Webb, his assistant called out, we're getting reports from the deep space monitoring arrays. The alien fleet is holding position about 40 light-years from here. How many ships? Webb asked. 47, sir, all heavily armed military vessels. Webb nodded grimly. And how many ships are we sending? His assistant consulted her datapad. Current count is over 800, sir, and more are launching every hour. The numbers told the story. Humanity was sending nearly 20 ships for every enemy vessel. But it wasn't about overwhelming force. Elena Rodriguez understood this as she watched her tactical display fill with friendly contacts. It was about making a statement. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim was monitoring communications from her station aboard the flagship Terran Pride. The messages flowing between human ships weren't about tactics or strategy. They were personal. This is Captain Morrison on the freight hauler Big Blue. My daughter is 8 years old. We're with you to the end. Mining vessel, Rock Crusher reporting. They took babies, that's all that matters. Commercial liner Starlight Express ready for action. We've got 300 volunteers aboard who've never been in combat before. They don't care. What struck Lieutenant Commander Kim the most was the tone. No one was discussing the odds or the risks. No one was talking about diplomatic solutions or prisoner exchanges. Every transmission carried the same message: return the children or face the consequences. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Boer flagship, watching the assembled fleet. In his 50 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. Ships that should have taken months to retrofit were ready for battle in hours. Crews that had never worked together were operating, like they had trained for years. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a message from the alien fleet. They want to negotiate. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Tell them we'll negotiate after they return our children. Until then, we're coming. For them. The officer hesitated. Sir, they're also asking about our intentions. They want to know if we're seeking a peaceful resolution. For the first time, Admiral Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Lieutenant, he said, tell them that we are seeking a resolution. It will be very peaceful for us once we get our children back and deal with the people who took them. The human fleet began its journey toward the enemy, moving through space like a force of nature. Behind them, Earth continued to send more ships. Every vessel that could fly was being pressed into service. It was as if the entire human race had become a single organism with one purpose. They were going to get their children back. Admiral Grakhthos stared at his sensor displays in growing disbelief. What had started as a few dozen human ships 3 days ago had grown into something he had never seen before. Over 1,000 vessels filled his screens, everything from massive military dreadnoughts to small civilian craft that had no business in a combat zone. Commander Thokmar, he growled, explained to me how primitive savages managed to assemble a fleet larger than the entire Korthak Navy. His science officer's scales had shifted to a nervous gray color. Admiral, our intelligence was incomplete. The humans appear to have been hiding their true capabilities. Their industrial capacity is at least 10 times what we estimated. That's impossible, Grakhthos snarled. We observed their colonies. We monitored their communications. They're barely past chemical rocket technology. On the main screen, the human fleet continued its approach. What troubled Grakhthos wasn't just the size of it, but the way it moved. There was no standard military formation, no organized battle lines. Instead, the ships flowed through space like a pack of predators, each group moving independently but somehow coordinated toward a single goal. Admiral, his communication officer called out. The humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're repeating the same message. Let me hear it, Grakhthos ordered. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in the calm, measured tones of someone making a simple statement of fact. This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Force. Return our children immediately, and you will be allowed to withdraw. Continue to hold them and face the consequences. You have 1 hour to comply. Grakhthos laughed, but the sound came out forced and hollow. 1 hour? They think they can dictate terms to the Korthak hegemony? Commander Thokmar cleared his throat nervously. Admiral, perhaps we should consider their offer. We could return the specimens and claim the mission was a success. Our scientists have gathered significant data already. Absolutely not. Grakhthos roared. The Korthak do not negotiate with inferiors. We will crush their pathetic fleet and show them what happens when primitives challenge their betters. But as the hour passed, Grakhthos began to notice disturbing details about the approaching human force. Their ships weren't following any recognizable attack pattern. Some were charging straight at the Korthak fleet, apparently planning to ram their targets. Others were moving in wide circles as if they planned to surround the entire Korthak formation. Most unsettling of all were the smaller civilian ships. Logic dictated that they should stay back and let the military vessels engage. Instead, they were mixed throughout the human formation, some of them actually leading the attack. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are entering weapons range. They're not responding to our warnings to maintain distance." "Fire warning shots," Grakthos ordered. "Show them the power of Korthak weapons." Several Korthak ships opened fire, their plasma cannons sending bright bolts of energy toward the nearest human vessels. Any rational fleet would have slowed down or changed course to avoid the deadly fire. The human fleet accelerated. "Admiral," Tokmar said quietly, "they're not trying to avoid our weapons. They're flying straight into them." Grakthos watched in horror as the first human ship, a converted cargo hauler, took a direct hit from a plasma cannon. The vessel's hull split open, and atmosphere vented into space. But instead of retreating or exploding, the dying ship continued forward, its engines still firing. "What are they doing?" Grakthos whispered. His question was answered when the crippled cargo ship collided with a Korthak destroyer. The explosion lit up space, taking both vessels with it. "Suicide attack," Tokmar said, his voice filled with shock. "They're willing to die to hurt us." But it wasn't just one ship. Across the battle zone, human vessels were making the same choice. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When their engines were destroyed, they set off their power cores. When they were boarded, they detonated their life support systems rather than surrender. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped her command chair as enemy fire rocked her ship. The Vigilant had taken severe damage, but her crew was still fighting with grim determination. "Captain," her weapons officer called out, "we've lost main guns. Only defensive systems are operational." Elena looked at her tactical display. The Korthak ship they had been engaging was still firing at them, its powerful weapons slowly tearing her vessel apart. In a normal battle, this would be the time to retreat or surrender. "All hands," Elena announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for ramming speed." There was no hesitation, no questioning of orders. Her crew had known this might be necessary from the moment they left Earth. They had signed up for this mission knowing that some of them might not come home. The children mattered more than their own lives. The Vigilant surged forward, its damaged engines screaming as Elena aimed for the enemy ship's bridge. Korthak weapons fire intensified, but Elena held her course. Behind her, she could see other human ships making the same choice. Admiral Grakthos realized he was losing control of the battle. His ships were designed to fight other military vessels in organized combat. They weren't prepared for enemies who treated their own ships as expendable ammunition. "All ships," he broadcast, "target the military vessels first. Ignore the civilian craft." But his gunners quickly discovered that the humans weren't making it easy to tell military from civilian. A luxury cruise ship would suddenly reveal hidden weapons and attack like a warship. A scientific research vessel would ram a Korthak cruiser with the same determination as a military destroyer. "Admiral," his communication officer said, his voice shaking, "we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Grakthos ordered. This time it wasn't Admiral Chen's voice, it was a woman speaking in the same calm tone as before. "This is Captain Sarah Mitchell. Admiral Chen's ship was destroyed 12 minutes ago. I am now in command. Return our children or we will continue this until every one of your ships is space debris. We have over 800 vessels remaining. You have 31. Grakthos checked his tactical display and felt his blood turn cold. In less than 2 hours of fighting, the humans had destroyed 16 of his ships. His fleet was still numerically superior, but the rate of loss was unsustainable. "How?" he asked Tokmar. "How are primitives defeating us?" His science officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Admiral, they're not fighting to win. They're fighting to hurt us. Every ship they lose takes one of ours with it. They don't care about survival or victory. They just want their young ones back." As if to prove his point, a human medical transport ship, clearly marked with healing symbols, suddenly fired makeshift missiles at a Korthak battlecruiser. When the battlecruiser returned fire, the medical ship didn't try to escape. Instead, it flew directly at the enemy vessel, its crew apparently planning to ram their target even as their ship was being torn apart. "They're insane," Grakthos breathed. "No," Tokmar replied, watching the battle unfold. "They're parents." In the depths of the bone crusher, 17 human children huddled together as the ship shook from weapons fire. Marcus, the oldest, held little Sarah close as she cried. "Are we going to die?" Sarah asked through her tears. Marcus looked up at the ceiling, imagining the battle raging above them. He thought about his parents, About all the parents of all the children here. He thought about what adults did when children were in danger. No, he said firmly. We're going to be rescued. The grown-ups are coming for us. Above them, the human fleet pressed forward with relentless determination, treating every enemy ship as a barrier between them and their children. They weren't fighting a war. They were removing obstacles. Ambassador Zethkri stood in the main chamber of the Galactic Council, his bioluminescent skin cycling through colors of grief and shock. Around him, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as they watched the final reports from the human-Korthak conflict. The numbers on the main display told a story that would be remembered for generations. Duration of conflict, 4 days, 7 hours, 23 minutes. Korthak vessels destroyed, 47 out of 47. Korthak colonies evacuated or destroyed, 23 out of 23. Korthak homeworld, under human occupation. Status of abducted human children, rescued, unharmed, returned to families. High Chancellor Vexana's tentacles moved slowly as she addressed the assembly. The Korthak hegemony has ceased to exist as a political entity. Their remaining population has scattered to refugee camps across 17 different systems. The humans accomplished in less than 5 days what the Council estimated would take months of diplomatic negotiation. Ambassador Drumax, the former Korthak representative, was no longer present. He had fled when reports reached the Council that human forces had surrounded his species' homeworld. The last communication from the Korthak government had been a desperate plea for the Council to intervene and stop what they called the human madness. Zethkri had tried to explain that it wasn't madness. It was something far more dangerous. Clarity of purpose. The human delegation has requested permission to address the Council, Chancellor Vexana announced. I have granted this request. The chamber doors opened and 3 humans walked in. They moved with quiet confidence, not like conquerors, but like people who had simply done what needed to be done. The lead human, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, approached the speaker's platform. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's translation systems. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the human governments of Earth and our colonial systems. I am here to formally request membership in the Galactic Council. A murmur ran through the chamber. It was highly unusual for a species to request membership so soon after their first major galactic conflict. Ambassador Chen, Chancellor Vexana said carefully, while your species has certainly demonstrated significant military capabilities, Council membership requires more than martial prowess. There are diplomatic protocols, cultural assessments, and... With respect, Chancellor, Ambassador Chen interrupted gently, I believe recent events have provided all the assessment necessary. My species has one simple principle that I think the Council needs to understand. We protect our children, all of them, at any cost. She gestured toward a side entrance, and 17 young humans entered the chamber. They were the children who had been rescued from the Korthak ships, now clean and healthy and surrounded by their parents. The sight of them sent a wave of protective instincts through every parent in the chamber. These children, Ambassador Chen continued, represent why humanity cannot and will not be ignored in galactic affairs, not because we seek conquest or domination, but because we will not allow anyone to threaten what we hold most precious. Ambassador, Ureth of the Shade Collective raised a tentacle. Ambassador Chen, your species' response to the Korthak incident was disproportionate. The complete extinction of their civilization over the temporary captivity of 17 individuals seems extreme. Ambassador Chen's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Ambassador Ureth, let me be very clear. From humanity's perspective, our response was perfectly proportionate. Someone took our children. We got them back and ensured it could never happen again. I would call that a measured response. Measured? Ambassador Klex of the Trelani sputtered. You destroyed an entire civilization. No, Ambassador Chen replied, calmly. We removed a threat to human children. The Korthak chose extinction over simply returning what they had stolen. That was their choice, not ours. Zethkri activated his speaking privileges. Ambassador Chen, I tried to warn the Korthak about human protective instincts. They wouldn't listen. But I must ask, what assurance can you give the Council that humanity won't use these same tactics against other species? Ambassador Chen smiled, and for the first time, her expression warmed. Ambassador Zethkri, Humanity has no interest in conquering or threatening anyone. We're actually quite peaceful by nature. We prefer trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. We want to be good neighbors to all spacefaring species. She paused, and her voice took on a harder edge. But understand this. Human children are not negotiable. They are not acceptable casualties. They are not valid military targets. Any species that harms human children will discover that we have an infinite capacity for creative problem-solving when properly motivated. The chamber fell silent. Several ambassadors exchanged worried glances. Chancellor Vexana cleared her throat. Ambassador Chen, are you saying that humanity would respond to any threat against your young with the same thoroughness you showed the Korthak? I'm saying that the safety of human children is humanity's highest priority, Ambassador Chen replied. We will use whatever means are necessary to ensure that safety. We hope that means peaceful cooperation with our galactic neighbors. But if it means something else, she shrugged. We're prepared for that too. Ambassador Drumax's replacement, a younger Korthak named Vectar, stood up. He was one of the few surviving members of his species' government. The humans didn't just defeat us, he said, his voice hollow. They hunted us. When we tried to negotiate, they ignored us. When we tried to retreat, they followed us. When we tried to hide, they found us. They didn't stop until there was nothing left. You could have stopped it at any time, Ambassador Chen pointed out. All you had to do was return the children. We tried, Vectar protested. After the first battle, we sent messages offering to return them. Ambassador Chen's expression grew puzzled. I'm sorry, but I don't recall receiving any such messages. Her aide whispered something in her ear and Chen nodded. Ah, yes. We did receive several communications from Korthak vessels. However, they were all conditional. Return the children, in exchange for safe passage, or return them as part of a negotiated settlement. You misunderstood our position? What was your position? Chancellor Vexana asked. Unconditional return of all children, unharmed, immediately, Ambassador Chen replied. No negotiations, no conditions, no delays. Anything else was unacceptable. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many ambassadors as possible. I want every species represented here to understand something. This is not unique human aggression. This is standard human behavior when our children are threatened. Every human parent, grandparent, sibling, or friend would have responded the same way. It's not a military doctrine or government policy. It's who we are as a species. One of the rescued children, Marcus, stepped forward. Can I say something? Ambassador Chen nodded, and the 14-year-old boy addressed the council in a clear, strong voice. The scary aliens kept asking us why the grown-ups were coming. They couldn't understand why people would fight for kids they'd never met, but that's normal for us. Adults protect children. All children, that's just what adults do. The simplicity of his words hit the chamber like a physical force. Here was a child explaining something that an entire alien civilization had died because they couldn't comprehend. Chancellor Vexana was quiet for a long moment. Ambassador Chen, humanity's membership application will be fast-tracked. I believe the Council would very much like to have you as allies rather than otherwise. We would prefer that as well, Ambassador Chen replied. Humanity looks forward to peaceful cooperation with all species. We have much to offer in terms of technology, culture, and resources. She paused and smiled again, but this time the smile was warm and genuine. We're actually quite fond of children from all species. Human families would be delighted to participate in cultural exchange programs, educational initiatives, and youth development projects. We think children are the future of galactic civilization. As the session concluded and the various ambassadors began to file out, Zethkri approached the human delegation. Ambassador Chen, he said, may I ask you something personally? Of course. Do you have children of your own? Ambassador Chen's face softened. 3, 2 daughters and a son. They're all adults now with children of their own. She looked toward the rescued children who were being reunited with their families. But every human child is my child when they're in danger. That's just how we're made. Zethkri nodded slowly. I think I understand now. Your species doesn't just protect your offspring. You protect the concept of offspring itself. Exactly, Ambassador Chen replied. And now that humanity is part of the galactic community, that protection extends to all children, from all species. Anyone who threatens a child anywhere in known space will discover that they have made enemies of every human in the galaxy. She extended her hand to Zethkri in the human gesture of friendship. We're looking forward to working with the Council to make the galaxy a safer place for everyone's children. As Zethkri shook her hand, he realized that the galaxy